Tonight's broadcast is made possible with the support of these underwriters.
It's hard to believe, but we have reached the final week of the regular season for our local high school basketball teams. Our area programs continue to battle each other night in and night out, and we're going to recap a couple of the crosstown rivalry games from back on Friday. Hey everybody, I'm Joe Katz from PortCityDaily.com, and welcome to Sports Roundtable. Tonight we'll talk with the four girls basketball coaches across New Hanover County, Ashley Hoggard, Laney, and New Hanover. A quick recap from some of the action before we get to our first guest this evening. The Hoggard girls basketball team hit the reset button before getting back to Mid-Eastern Conference play late last week. The day off from practice is just what the Vikings needed as Hoggard used contributions from up and down the lineup in a 52-41 win against New Hanover. It was the Vikings' third straight win over their crosstown rivals this season. They improved to 10-2 in conference and 19-5 overall. The Wildcats saw their 5-game winning streak come to a close, dropping to 10-2 in the division and 17-6 on the year. 3 players finished in double figures for the Lady Vikes, including team captains Emma Haywood and Aaliyah Thompson. Haywood drained 2 trays, went 6 of 6 from the charity stripe, and finished with a team-high 18 points. Final score again, Hoggard 52, New Hanover 41. That will bring us to our first guest this evening, the head coach of the Hoggard Vikings, the 4th-year head coach, Boubacar Ah. And Coach, like I said, sometimes when you hit a rut in sports, you need to step away from the game. You dropped the game against Ashley earlier last week. You took the day off of practice the next day. You got back to business as usual Friday night with a big win over New Hanover.
Well, absolutely. I felt like it was necessary just to, stay away from the court and from basketball for one day, because when you get to this point of the season, it's no longer physical. It's more mental. So I just wanted to give the girl a day off to kind of, think about, stuff, and myself as well, evaluate how, think what we were doing. And I thought it definitely helped us. And, Joe, I was on our best game, and especially when you play a team 7 times in 2 years, and 6 out of 7 times you beat them. So eventually they're going to figure out how to, and I thought Ashley came out with more energy than we did. They hit more shots than we did. They created more turnovers than we did. And they were really better all across the aisles. And, I give them all the credit. They made us definitely do stuff we didn't want to do. But.
Well, the game against New Hanover, I thought you got back to what was you were doing earlier in the season, and that is using contributions from up and down the lineup. Of course, your team captains have big nights in the scoring column. On the rebounding efforts, Aaliyah Thompson had 13-14 rebounds. Blair Barefoot, off the bench, a freshman, scored 10. But I thought defensively, you got Kaylin Brannon back in the lineup for the first time in a couple of games. She forces a big steal there, a big turnover late in the first half, and that kind of swung the momentum onto your side, and you were able to take care of business in that second half.
Well, Caitlin, we are very happy to have everybody back, like you said. We haven't had everybody back. We played, Alani has been hurt, Caitlin has been hurt, Keely Britt been dealing with some injuries as well. But Caitlin is, one of my best defensive players, and it's amazing how young she already understands my concept, and she's buying into it. So that's the kind of player you look for. And Emma is, the best player we have, and not just scoring, but she does a little bit of everything. But I think the key of the game is just getting back to fundamentals, which is, like I always tell them, you can always have a bad shooting night. However, you can never have a bad defensive night. And I felt like, some of the game we've lost, we came out just, lack of daisical, just letting people, just not controlling the ball, not closing out on on people. And when you do that, and people gain confidence in the beginning of the game, then you're in for a, you're in it for a long night. And but I got to give a lot of credit to the girls for just mentally getting over the hump and mentally just it's not easy to lose, against Ashley, especially against Ashley, but they turn the page and they understand, hey, we lost, but we got more games played. We got to get over it and play.
Well, it puts you back into a first-place tie in the Mid-Eastern Conference standings right now because of the success that you've had against New Hanover. As long as you can take care of business later this week against Laney, that'll give you a #1 seed in the Mid-Eastern Conference and the higher seed when it comes to the 4A state playoffs if you can hold serve against Laney. But the Bucks had your number last time you played them in Bucktown a couple of weeks back. They shot the lights out, and anytime you go up against a Laney team, you know they're going to play a tough defensive effort against your team, of course. And looking into later on this week, the regular season finale, what's the focus here in the next couple of days to gear up for your final home game against the Bucks?
Well, Joe, anytime you play against any of the 4 teams in the county, I mean, you're gonna have a tough game. I mean, it's just not Laney against Ashley and Hanover. It's gonna be a tough game, and I felt like Laney, when we played them the first time around, they played much better when we did. They played more disciplined, and they were more determined. They had more energy than we did, and I told my girls this past week, we're not gonna focus on no longer on winning. I think it was they had a lot of pressure, just conference champ and all of that. So now we're just gonna have fun. We're just gonna go ahead and play basketball and make sure we play with a lot of passion. That's what I'm looking for now. A lot of passion. And yeah, Laney, they're going to be ready, but we'll be ready as well.
You play with plenty of passion on Friday night, and if you bring that energy to the floor every time out for the rest of the season, you're going to be pretty successful. Hoggard coach Boubacar Aw, the 4th-year head coach of the Lady Vikings. He's got the Vikes at 10-2 in conference and 19-5 overall. Coach, always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, we'll take a quick break. Thanks again to Coach Boubacar Aw for stopping by. We will catch up with the 3 other varsity basketball coaches from New Hanover County right after this quick timeout. High school basketball fans, welcome back to Sports Roundtable as we continue our discussion tonight with the 4 varsity girls basketball coaches across New Hanover County. I'm Joe Katz from PortCityDaily.com. Don't forget, get local score stats and highlights each and every day online for free at PortCityDaily.com. Thanks again to Coach Boubacar Aw for stopping by last segment to talk about his Hoggard girls basketball team atop the division right now. Joining us here for the next segment is the head coach of the Ashley Screaming Eagles, Adrian Gale. And Coach Gale, heading down the stretch here, last couple of games of the regular season, a tough setback the other night against Laney, 38-35. You had control of that game early. You let things slip away. We talked earlier last week about the highs being high, the lows being low, a low point for you on Friday. How do we get to that consistency right here down the last couple of games and into the conference tournament to potentially make a move here to get a tournament championship?
Well, I wish I knew. I'm going to work on it and try to figure out how we can do that. One thing is we have to not turn the ball over. That's been killing us. And you're just waiting for that youth to kind of mature a little bit more, and the inexperience and pressure situations to say, hey, we've been in this situation before and hasn't turned out the way we like it. It's about time we fix it. But you just hope that one of these days that it clicks and that they get it, and it'll sink in and they'll make a difference.
I think one of the toughest things, we talked about it with Coach Aw, you play a team 6, 7, 8 times in a course of the last couple of seasons. You know the coaches, you know the players, so it's a matter of just doing what you do best and kind of letting the chips fall where they may. Obviously against Laney, that is the same recipe there. You know what they're going to bring against you, maybe a couple variations here and there, but for the most part, same players, maybe a different venue. At the end of the day, it comes down to the players making plays and keeping control of the basketball, not turning things over.
Yeah, well, we beat Hoggard with good defense, and we started out the first quarter or half actually, with good defense, and then just kind of, I don't know if we just settled, or I know Laney also picked up the D on that end and forced us to make mistakes. So then just started seeing it slip away, and just had a couple of opportunities to try to get it back, but just didn't convert.
You're not the only team in this county or around high school basketball that has trouble getting their players to understand the value of keeping possessions and playing methodical basketball on the offensive end and not allowing errant turnovers to turn into points on the other end. So have joy in that.
Okay,
You're not the only coach that deals with
Yeah.
that. But with that said, how do you get these girls to focus in on the task at hand to make sure that they are doing that for the entirety of a ball game?
We try to do some stuff at practice with situation, but you just can't, simulate that game. And we've been in close games. We've been in overtime games this year, and, we've lost more than we won. So, we thought that, maybe you just don't want to lose anymore. And, and again, it's unfortunately just the game experience and the youth. I hate to make an excuse for them, but they're just not. They haven't been in these situations enough, and the leadership skills just need to kind of, surface a little bit more in these game situations, in these tight games, and hoping that it'll click some point if we get a chance to be in these situations in the next week or two.
Well, way back at the early portion of the season, I had you as the dark horses to
Yeah.
make a move in the conference. So maybe we can use that as a little bit of a pep talk for these girls here in the last couple of games in the season to spark them to a Mid-Eastern Conference tournament. I know we're a long way away from that. We've got to take care of some business this week. First with the trip to Brogdon Hall, then you get a West Brunswick team on your floor on senior night. So a special occasion, obviously, anytime you can recognize those seniors. So I thought right now would be a good opportunity to do so here on the show.
Yeah. Any in-town rival, how that is, how that goes. It's always going to be fun Tuesday night. And then Thursday, we have 3 seniors, Carly, Zara, and Caitlin. So, it'll be a special night for them. And they put in the hours and the time. So I'll be happy for them to be out in the court.
At the end of the day, many students, many parents, many people don't understand what it takes to play varsity sports at any level, at the high school level, any sport. A lot of time, a lot of dedication, obviously, a lot of dealing with nagging in your ear from the head coach sometimes on what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. Just how hard is it maybe sometimes to be a high school athlete and the pressure that goes along with that?
I think these they got a lot going on. I think nowadays too, they have a lot more outside influences than they did back in the day, just with the social media and just kind of being, pulled in different directions. So to get them to focus is a task, and my girls are great in the classroom with their academics, so they're real focused on that. So with just school and sports alone, it's a fine balance, and we didn't practice Saturday. Sometimes you have to give them a little space and a little time, and then hope that my thing is I'm just asking for 2 hours, hour and a half of your time. Just give me that, and hopefully we can have some good practices and they can focus on what they need to do.
We've got 2 games to go in the regular season. Coach Adrian Gale, the Screaming Eagles, 6-4 in the conference, 9-10 overall, looking to get back over that 500 mark come the season finale against West Brunswick on Thursday.
Yep, hoping.
Coach Gale from the Ashley Screaming Eagles. They've got 2 more regular season games to go before the Mid-Eastern Conference tournament gets underway February 15th through the 19th down at Brunswick Community College. We'll take a quick break here on Sports Roundtable. Again, I'm Joe Katz from PortCityDaily.com. On deck circle is the head coach of the Laney Buccaneers, Sherry Tyne. She'll be joining us right after this quick break. High school basketball fans, welcome back to Sports Roundtable. I'm Joe Katz from PortCityDaily.com. Get your local scores, stats, and highlights each and every day for free online at PortCityDaily.com. Continuing the discussion this evening here on Sports Roundtable with the 4 head coaches from across New Hanover County talking girls basketball this week. Thanks again to Coach Gale and Coach Boubacar All for stopping by earlier in the show. The Laney Buccaneers picked up a 38-35 result against Ashley back on Friday night. Lexi Melville scored 12 of her team high 14 points in the second half, including a pair of shots from long range. Bailey Edwards chipped in with 9. Anna Ray Purcelli had 8. And the Laney Buccaneers improved to 7-3 in the division, 13-9 overall. Coach Sherry Tynes joining us right now. here on stage this evening. And Coach, before we get to last week's win and the preparations ahead of the final week of the regular season leading into the conference tournament, this past Friday, a couple of your athletes signed letters of intent, made college announcements. You got a little choked up there talking about your two players in Bailey Edwards and Anna Purcelli. Bailey, of course, staying in town. She committed as a sophomore to play soccer at UNCW. She'll continue and lived up to that commitment and signed her national letter of intent. Anna Ray Purcelli is going to go play soccer and tennis at Greensboro College. Not basketball players, but they've done a great job this season and throughout the course of their high school career on the basketball court for you, and you obviously made that known during your talk with them this past Friday.
Yeah, I mean, they've just made a tremendous impact in our program, and you know, they're both great kids. They work hard. They find a way. It's not their specialty sport, but you know, they find a way to be successful, and I think that carries over in the other things that they do. You know, it doesn't come easy, but then they find a way, and they've just got that fight in them to get the job done, and I think they have fun. You know, I think they mix it up a little bit. They have fun. They have some variety, so they never get stagnant in one sport or the other. But you know, we like soccer players because they do have most of the time quick feet, and that which translates into us defense. So we like that.
Coach, you know, maybe we could just talk a little bit about that before we get to some of the game footage in last week's game. The fact that, you know, there's so much specialization these days in what kids are doing when it comes to athletics, and I know you probably wish you had a couple of basketball-only players, but how important is it to be a well-rounded athlete? I guess obviously, you know, moving forward, if you continue to play in college, or just to have that experience moving, you know, through life.
Well, I mean, I think that's it. I think, you know, we've had a lot of kids that have played more than one sport, and they've been very successful. I think it's good for them to get a taste of other coaches, other sports, other teams, you know, highs and lows. How do you deal in a situation where that may not be your strength, but can you still be successful? Right. And certainly that's a lot tougher than, you know, being in your sport and always being great and never having many challenges because you're really good at it. And I mean, I think it's good in terms of, you know, burnout. I think some of these kids get burnt out when they play the same sport 365 days of the year. Right. And I mean, I want them to look forward to my season. You know, I don't want them to be tired by the time my season starts. So, you know, that's the upside, I think, to that. But, you know, I think it's possible to be a successful multi-sport athlete, but I think today a lot of times you've got kids and their parents thinking they need to not do that in order to be successful. Right. And the two kids we just talked about were primary examples of how it is successful and how you can play at the next level and do more than one thing and enjoy your high school experience, you know, and be successful.
Right. Well, congratulations again to a pair of Laney Buccaneers. They were actually 2 of 7 athletes to sign national letters of intent, make college commitments back on Friday. We had over 2 dozen across the you know, Cape Fear region make college announcements last week. So congratulations to those athletes getting back to the hardwood finally. You know, you picked up a win against Topsail. As we look at some of this footage from a couple of games ago, obviously grabbed a 3-point win over Ashley. You're 7-3 in the division right now, 13-9 in conference. 3rd place right now, not too bad without a true basketball player on your team. You know, what has been the recipe for success here in the last couple of games for you to get in the win column?
Well, just keep playing hard, you know, through the thick and through the thin. And, you know, we've had to scramble and scratch and scrape, and, you know, not a lot has come real easy for us this year. And the kids just, you know, they just wouldn't give up. You know, they tried to find a way, and, you know, fortunately, for the majority of the time, it's worked out in our favor. And, you know, you just got to stay positive. You know, the shot's not going to always go in, and, you know, fortunately, the opponent's shot's not going to always go in, even though it seemed that way on Friday night. I think they shot 57% first half, and we might have shot 7. But, you know, it was just staying focused and staying in the game and not letting the negative get in our head, and, right, you know, just find a way. You know, and I got kids that they work hard, they scrap. It's not always pretty, but, I mean, you know, you hit a shot here or there, and the tide turns, and you play some defense, and it keeps you in the game. And you find a way. You know, we're not going to score 60, 70 points, but right, you know, if we can keep our opponents in the low 30s and try to squeak out 35, I mean, that's about what we are right now.
Well, what you were a couple of weeks back, you shot the lights out in that win against Hoggard. You're going to get to you know, play the Vikings again here at least one more time come Thursday night at 3rd place in the regular season finale. Moving into that game, what's going to be the talk to the girls about what you need to do in order to you know, pick up another upset win against Hoggard.
You shoot lights out again. And we got to shoot better. You know, they're a team that's very explosive and can put points on the boards. You got to take away their second chance points. They've got some big girls inside that like to get those little putbacks, and we just got to make them work for all the points that they do get. You know, no easy layups off turnovers. Try not to have as many turnovers, and try to force some turnovers on our part, and you know, give them one shot and make sure it's a tough one, and be patient.
As the head coach of the Laney Buccaneers, Sherry Tynes. Coach Tynes, always a pleasure. I'm glad that you're finally casted up in that foot and hopefully back moving soon.
Thanks.
That's Coach Tynes for the Laney Buccaneers. Again, the Bucs are 7-3 in the division, 13-9 overall. We'll take our last break here on Sports Roundtable. We'll catch up with the head coach of the New Hanover Wildcats, Bertha Dixon, right after this. High school basketball fans, welcome back to Sports Roundtable. Wrapping up our discussion this evening with the 4 varsity girls basketball coaches from across New Hanover County. We've got 2 teams that are tied atop the division right now, Hoggard and New Hanover, right at 9-2 in conference. The Wildcats at 16-6 overall. Coming off a setback against the Hoggard Vikings, the 3rd setback this year against the Hoggard Vikings. And Coach Bertha Dixon Wright is on stage with me this evening to wrap up our conversation. And Coach, I know a tough loss against Hoggard, a team that you're very familiar with over the last 2 years, really. I talked to Coach All earlier in the show. I think that was the 7th time you two played each other in the last 2 years. Could have another date with them later on in the Mid-Eastern Conference tournament if everything falls into place. Yeah. Right now you share the #1 spot in the conference, but coming off that 52-41 defeat at their place was a tough one.
It was.
How do you rebound moving into the final week of the regular season?
Well, because it is the final week, you have to rebound. We've got 1 game left. They've got 1 game left. We get to play at home. That's a good thing. We've got Ashley, who is up and coming. They're much improved, but you have to rebound. If we sit back and we dwell on that loss, we can't get better.
Right.
There's after looking at the stats, after looking at our films, there's a lot of things that we could have done a little differently, and sometimes it's kind of hard to make adjustments on the fly, and you really get wrapped up in the game and you really don't know what has happened until you look at that stat sheet. But we had some key people who kind of faded out in some crucial times, and that's not good for us.
Well, with that said, you do have a bunch of sophomores and a couple of juniors that play for you right now.
Right.
So that can tend to happen, that they do maybe fade away or not understand the, what they need to do in order for you to be successful.
Yeah.
But I thought early in that ball game, at least towards the end of the first half, your players were doing what they should be doing down the floor. Amani Muhammad being one of them, kind of dictating the pace on the offensive end, hitting step back jumpers, getting to the lane. Azaria Fields, another player that can do that for you. They need to stay consistent and do that for all 4 quarters if you want to be successful.
That's true, they do. And then if something happens, the defense adjusts, then it's time to find the other players. Find your Ayanna Cotton, find your Liz Kreiner, Kaylee Murray, and like you said, and I'm gonna blame it on youth, and that's what I'm gonna leave it at. Sometimes it's hard to get them to understand that's what's going on.
Well, right now, as I mentioned, you were at the top of the conference, still at 9-2. You could have really solidified that first place spot if you were able to beat Hoggard the other night. But with that said, you're gearing up for a game against Ashley, and then you're going to have some time off before you get into the Mid-Eastern Conference tournament, where you could potentially play 3 games in 5 days. How do you prepare your team for something like that? On your way to a conference crown.
The good part is we've had to play the 3 in a week before. Right. I think the last time I was here, we were talking about how we were going to prepare for that. And we've got some time, and I like time because it gives me this day to work on nothing but this day to work on nothing but transition, so I get to break it down day by day, and they seem to respond a little better to that. Won't know, of course, until after Tuesday night's game exactly who we will play and where we will be. So we'll have some time to have short practices but intense practices, and I think that's good for us.
As you get geared up for the conference tournament, of course, One of the things that you're going to have to deal with is that first round game where you've taken care of the teams that you're probably going to be facing, and
Yes.
that's always a tough challenge
Oh,
when
yes.
you beat teams pretty good
Yeah.
one or two times during the course of the regular season to
Right.
make sure that your team is motivated and energized and focused
Yeah.
to take care of business on Monday or Tuesday to propel you into the semifinals, potentially the finals.
Well, we'll take the stat sheets off the wall. That's what happened back then, so you don't need those now. We won't be watching the video. Coaches will watch the video, but players won't be able to, because all they're going to go is, oh, I stole this, I made that. Well, that's behind us now.
Right.
Those teams have improved some. So, we'll take all of that off, and it's just like starting over. So we can say, this is South Brunswick, but it's a different South Brunswick. This is West or whoever we're playing, but it's a different. And so we have to come out with that attitude and approach the game a little differently, and
Well,
hopefully we'll come through.
The way it looks to me is that the Mid-Eastern Conference tournament is going to shape up a lot like how the standings have shaped up, where the
Yeah.
4 Wilmington schools are going to likely face off again in the semifinals, potentially in the finals.
Yeah.
When you play a team and are very familiar with the team 6, 7, 8 times in the course of 2 years,
Too much.
at the end of the day, what does it come down to be able to pick up those wins instead of being on the other side of those games?
Well, it comes down to making your free throws. It comes down to know who their shooters are, know what their shooters can do. Do they fake and then drive hard? Do they dish off? It comes down to when we get the fast breaks or the opportunity to drive, you have to make the layups. It's the little things that's going to make the difference. We can look at the game film of that game forever, but until they get out on the court and execute and know, you got to have a better feel of what's going on. Then it may be different. That's just too many times to play a team.
Yeah, way too many times, and you're so familiar with each
Yes,
other, and
that's
you're
just
so
too
familiar
bad.
with the coaches and what they want to do. So at the end of the day, it just comes down to, like you said, knocking down your free throws,
Yes.
limiting some turnovers,
Yes,
making
yes, yes.
shots in key situations, especially in those last few possessions of the game.
Right. And then people say, well, the score was 52-41. What'd you do? Turn the ball over a lot? We actually had a low number of turnovers. It's not that. We just got to execute a little better. Got to do that and know what they do. And for goodness sake, stop their transition. You have to do that. So.
Well, the New Hanover Wildcats right now looking to get back in the win column this week. They'll wrap up the regular season and gear up for the Mid-Eastern Conference basketball tournament coming up, February 15th through the 19th at Brunswick Community College. Coach Bertha Dixon-Wright, the Wildcats, 9-2 in the division right now. Shared division lead.
Yeah.
Coach, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Joe.
That's the head coach of the New Hanover Wildcats, Bertha Dixon-Wright. We appreciate all 4 of the coaches from across New Hanover County for stopping by tonight on Sports Roundtable. That will do it for our latest edition of the show. We will catch up with the 4 varsity boys basketball coaches next week here on Sports Roundtable. For everyone at New Hanover County Schools TV, I'm Joe Katz. Until next time.